I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. Stop agreeing with yourself. Stop agreeing with yourself.
Hello and welcome to Glass Half Full Reviews, and trying a little something different now. That's where I'm wearing the old spectacles, just so I can more easily keep an eye on whether or not the camera's having any focus problems. But, moving aside, let's get on to today's review.
Hercules.
Now, Hercules is this new movie from director Brett Ratner, known for such classics as Rush Hour, Rush Hour 2, and a whole bunch of crap, like X-Men 3 movie, which was terrible, and Tower Heist, which was also terrible. Classic Ratner. He's... But this one's a little bit different. So Hercules stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the titular role of Hercules. Hercules. Of course, I say that because Hercules was the name in the Greek myths of Hercules, which everybody knows if they're being at all pedantic or nerdy, which I am, because that's sort of my thing. I'm pedantic and nerdy. Hercules, of course, named for Hera, Zeus's wife, because, he's like, oh, sorry that I cheated on a billion, women with you, but, whatever. When it came into the Roman myths, Hercules, and for whatever reason, that name just sounds cooler. I think we can all agree Hercules versus Heracles. So, Hercules. How many movies have been made? A bunch, including a couple very famous ones. Obviously, there was the Kevin Sorbo show, Hercules, the Legendary Journeys, or what have you, and it's a very interesting character. It's basically sort of one of the original superheroes of classic times. Sure, you can go back further to the, like the Mesopotamian era and so on to say, oh, this was the first one, but Hercules is one of those characters that is really sort of echoed throughout the ages that we've gone back to over and over again as this real, he's a super strong guy who has a tragic backstory and sort of a happy ending, in a matter of speaking. It depends on which of the myths you go to, but obviously the Greeks weren't always into the happy endings of things. They like their tragedy. So, what's going on here? The Hercules movie that we're talking about is actually based on a series of graphic novels by Steve Moore from Radical Comics, and in particular, the one called the Thracian Wars. The story here is actually a little controversial. I don't know if people have heard, but basically, Steve Moore, who has since passed away, did not get paid for any of the rights to this movie, and he didn't want his name associated with it. While he was alive, they said sure. But then they put his name back on to start promoting it. Whoops. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. But, what are you going to do? So, let's get into the review itself. Because, yes, the studio was being kind of scummy, but, I can't really... Whoopsie daisy. Sorry, Alan Moore. I know you've got a great beard, but people are still going to see this movie. So, this is sort of an interesting thing, because the movie starts, and you start hearing this guy talking about the narration of Hercules and all his legendary trials. He punched a lion, he punched a hydra, he punched a giant boar, etc. But what actually happens is, it turns out that it's all sort of a bit of a sham. It's like this legend of Hercules is actually a hoax that's, they spread these ideas about Hercules. Hercules, of course, really big, really strong, very talented warrior. But he actually has this team of very talented individuals, and they're all competent. But because he has such a great team, he's actually able to do amazing things. All those monsters... maybe not so monstery, maybe they were actual people, but hey, if it helps people be afraid of Hercules and maybe pay us more money, great! So, his storyteller nephew, Aeolus, is the guy who's sort of going around saying oh yeah, Hercules is great, right? Yeah, look at it, he literally ripped a hydra in half. Now, maybe there was never an actual hydra, maybe it was the name of some kind of soldier or something, but that's not important. So, as the story gets going, we get a little bit of introduction. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson gets to punch a little bit of butt. And then the story gets started. And basically the team is hired by the Princess of Thrace, played by some actress that is... whatever, I'll mention that a little bit later. But basically, Lord Cotus of Thrace wants to hire them because there's this rebel barbarian out there, Rhesus, causing trouble, burning villages to the ground, etc., etc. You know the drill. So, hey, Hercules and co., why don't you come by and help out? So they have to come in and train the farmers to become warriors and etc. It goes into the directions you might expect. Oh, a twist that I found predictable. Another twist I found predictable. Wait, you're telling me his tragic backstory has something to do with the rest of the plot? What a surprise. Now, I haven't read the original comic, so for all I know, the story might be exactly the same there, and thus exactly as predictable, or they just did an adaptation. That may be the case. But it's still not such a brilliant story. But what works here? What works? The Rock, of course. You get to see him throw a horse, punch a lion, all the great stuff you'd expect from a Rock as Hercules story. Now, the action's very, very PG-13, very bloodless, and kind of tiresome over time. I mean, some of the action scenes are definitely fought well, and they look okay. I did like that the movie spent some time on the different people of his team to show off all of their capabilities. That was cool. And there were some mini arcs and some I almost cared about this character's story. Almost. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was something. All right, I think that's enough. Let's get into my 5-point breakdown.
5-point breakdown.
All right, so starting from the top, I've gone back and forth on this kind of thing, but most wrestlers are not the best actors.
I am Hercules!
But I have to say, The Rock is definitely one of the best wrestler-turned-actors I think there ever has been. I mean, he's just so charismatic, and he definitely brings a lot of that to this role. I think he doesn't get twice as much of a chance to really shine that I'd like to see from this kind of character. I mean, it's a little too gruff, and not enough like fun. The Rock, which is, I think, one of his strong suits, is that he's able to play these different kinds of characters and different perspectives and different roles. I would have liked to see that a little bit more. But in general, he does a great job. A lot of his team, Ian McShane is there. He's pretty good. I mean, John Hurt is fine as the Lord Cotus. A lot of the subsidiary characters are just sort of okay. It's really not the acting that's an issue here. I mean, Joseph Fiennes comes in as playing this king of Athens, and he's like campy, but he's not campy enough. It's a very weird decision of the movie. Like, it's almost like it can't figure out whether or not it wants to go crazy with it, or if it wants to be kind of like safe, and that's actually a big problem. So the acting is sort of like a little too subtle, I guess. It's too subtle for a Hercules as a Rock movie. Can't believe it, but it's true. All right, moving on. What about the story? As I've already said, the story is simple. It's kind of boring. It's bleh. So whatevs. Let's move on to the next thing. How does it look? Oh man, I am mixed on this. I like a lot of the action scenes, but again, they get to be kind of tiresome because it's the same kind of thing over and over and over again, and I guess I was just a little disappointed that it wasn't as good as it could have been. Brett Ratner is just not the best director for anything, let alone for real action. It just wasn't dynamic enough for me. I mean, it was fun. It was a fun thing to watch, but it wasn't fun enough. And I think people getting into this thinking that there's going to be a lot of CGI battle stuff, they may be disappointed because there was a little bit, but that's sort of a little montage-y thing, and it's not really part of the main story, so that's kind of unfortunate, but there's not much you can do about that. All right. How does it feel? It feels fine. I mean, when I left, I said, it was a perfectly average The Rock action movie. That's really how I feel. It's not bad. Some people are calling it horrible. I think that's wrong. And some people are calling it great. I think that's also wrong. I think it is really fun, but not great. So that moves us into number 5. And I really want to see The Rock do something interesting. Now, I have heard some rumors, and this might be kind of dated if anyone ever watches this video later, but I hear he might be playing Captain Marvel or Shazam in one of the new DC Comics movies coming out. And that would be pretty cool, because I'd like to see him in that kind of role. I feel like that actually would fit really well, because that character is sort of an interesting mix of earnest but smart, because he's basically a boy that turns into a really strong superhero. So he has a lot of the sort of naivety of a kid, but the strength and power of a real Superman-like superhero. So, that could be cool. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't really want to see more villain stuff. I don't want to see more another, Conan light, which is essentially what I felt some of this was kind of pushing towards. I want to see more good things for The Rock, because he's definitely one of the most talented action stars out there, and he has a physicality that means he can really pull off believably doing a lot of this stuff. That's what I'd like to see. Will it get that way? I don't know. Really hard to say. That's what I'd like to see. Anyway, let's get on to my final recommendation. So do I recommend this movie? You know what? If you want to see The Rock throw a horse at someone, you need to see this movie. Otherwise, you do not. And I think that's about as good as you could sum it up. Thanks for stopping by.